In this Fractured Online gameplay overview, we're going to dive into the knowledge point system, crafting features, gameplay loop, and combat mechanics of the new Sandbox MMORPG developed by Dynamight Studios and published by Gamigo US Incorporated. Fractured Online was released on September 15th into early access on PC via Steam and by the game's website, fracturedonline.com. Note that this is a Gamigo-sponsored post. Please note sponsored posts are only sponsoring coverage. Our opinions on the game are our own and not affected by any business relationships with developers or publishers. Fractured Online is an isometric, open-world sandbox MMORPG, which is comprised of player-driven worlds, granting you the freedom to interact with others while crafting your paths together. Will you form an alliance with a budding guild to grow both of your cities, or will you choose to study their movements to destroy them eventually? As with other sandbox survival RPGs like Myth of Empires, you'll need to be equipped with the right items and gear before exploring the worlds of Syndesia or Arboreus. After all, you won't only build your city to conquer lands. When it comes to progression, the game follows a familiar path as in Mortal Online 2, where you do not only simply gather materials and then create your house and workstations in order to craft good quality equipment. Instead, you and your guildmates will have to claim a piece of land beforehand to create your home base and research the upgrades you need. Doing so will require a hefty amount of gold and several settlers. Afterward, you can begin to build a strong foundation. In terms of combat, Fractured Online features a unique knowledge point system in which you learn the abilities of your fallen foes. The more you fight a hostile creature, the more you understand what they are capable of doing. Furthermore, the game is kinder to newer players who are granted the young status after leaving the tutorial area. This protects them from getting harmed by those who are keen to engage in PvP. But once they've completed 40 hours of playtime and accumulated 80,000 knowledge points, they will no longer be classified as such, and are therefore susceptible to being slain. However, that is only for Syndesia. On Arboreus, players cannot engage in PvP with another player without permission, and this is one of the many caveats of the game that each planet has its own set of rules. Fractured Online is set in two different planets, namely Syndesia and Arboreus. It wasn't always this way. Long before the Rapture, there was but one world called Elysium. This used to be the home to all until it was torn into 3 worlds because of the Great Betrayal in a bid to dominate and control the rest of the races. And so humans adapted in Syndesia, wildfolk acclimated in Arboreus, and demons raised hell and Tartaros. We'll talk about them in the next section in character creation. Rather than following a storyline, Fractured Online relies on player interaction to tell where the narrative goes. After the tutorial section, you are teleported to your chosen planet depending on your race, and then it will be up to you to carve your own path. There won't be quests to guide you, nor will there be any NPCs. As such, I highly suggest immediately joining a guild. Doing so will open up several opportunities, such as efficiently gathering resources, building a city from scratch, and even fighting bandits together. Playing as a wildfolk, I found Arboreus visually appealing because of its bold colors and adequate lighting. It is also resource-rich and decent with its varied biomes, which distinctly highlight the game's weather system. Although due to the massive scale, the world feels empty sometimes, especially when you traverse from the starter town to other sections of the world to farm materials. Even though there are creatures to fight and resources to gather, the inclusion of random events to shake things up would make exploration better, and I'm hoping that they'll add something like world bosses in the near future. In terms of the audio, Fractured Online features few background music and sound effects, the latter of which usually comes from combat. As such, the MMO's overall sound ambiance is relatively the same. Hopefully, more tracks will be added in the full launch depending on the type of environment you explore and the beasts you encounter. In Fractured Online, you begin by choosing your character's race, whether they are human or wildfolk. Note that the demon race has not yet been implemented, making their home planet Tartaros unavailable. The humans of Syndesia lack the primal and physical energy that fuels the wildfolk and demons. However, they compensate for it by freely seeking knowledge, allowing them to become technologically driven to significantly enhance their cities. As such, they are prepared for whatever comes their way, may it be skirmishes or large-scale wars. Next are the wildfolk of Arboreus. These tribal beasts are peaceful and often treat other clans with respect. They also have a good relationship with nature despite hunting and gathering its resources. The wildfolk prioritize taking care of their environments they live in as a means of giving back what they take. Because of this special bond, they can draw power from Arboreus' earth, making them a force to be reckoned with. Afterward, you'll decide your subrace and physical appearance. If you select the wildfolk, you get the attribute bonuses, but if you become a human, you will instead pick a gender. Should you wish to quietly navigate the lands of Arboreus without drawing too much attention, then the Tigerkin is a good choice. You will also receive extra points for dexterity, strength, constitution, and perception, as well as a small boost to your crit chance. But if you prefer to play as a mage, then choosing the Heartkin would be better because the subrace grants mana and spell damage boosts. You also gain points for intelligence, dexterity, perception, and charisma. Next is the background, which serves as your starter class. Regardless of the race you go for, the same 4 backgrounds still apply, namely the Gladiator, Bowman, Arcanist, and Street Rat. The Gladiator is a barbarian with abilities that let you lunge at enemies and deal massive damage while knocking them back. The Bowman is your classic archer who can trap targets in place and consequently shoot arrows at them. The Arcanist is the wizard who casts offensive and defensive spells, while the Street Rat is similar to the rogue, who uses dexterity as their main attribute to deal melee damage. The last part of character creation is deciding what attributes to tweak, although there is already a preset available based on your background. You'll then be taught the basics of the game in the tutorial area via small quests. I highly suggest killing the creatures in this world in reference to the bestiary section of the Book of Knowledge to save a lot of knowledge points. Doing so will help you with character progression early on. You should also craft a full set of commoner gear in preparation for your travels on the mainland. As mentioned previously, the KP system is what will help you progress further. Unlike other MMOs, you do not level up and instead you accumulate knowledge points to then invest in abilities and talents. This implemented system is the highlight of Fractured Online because you are rewarded by engaging in a variety of activities such as discovering points of interest, learning about varied creatures, and even fighting hostile enemies. The latter is especially crucial to the skills you get to unlock. When you go over the Book of Knowledge, which serves as your codex, you'll see the bestiary. Some beasts, like the rabbit, do not really grant skills and abilities, whereas others, such as the bandit, agitator, and sproutling, do. Depending on your build, you'll need to seek these creatures out to learn more about their attack patterns and eventually the skills you wish to acquire. You do not need to be fully knowledgeable about the enemy to gain some abilities. For example, you have to be 30% knowledgeable on the crested lizards to learn the Bleeding Strike skill. Over at the Skills and Abilities menu, you unlock abilities and talents by spending KP. Abilities are active skills where talents are passives. The latter shows a smaller version of interconnected perks, quite similar to Path of Exile skill tree. Some of them have yet to be implemented like the Seer and True Sight, but others as Evasion and Accuracy are already working as intended. Remember to memorize the respective ability and talent presets for these to take effect. Fractured Online features a lot of other activities that will keep players engaged. On top of the unique KP system, there are survival elements to consider such as hunger and energy. To curb hunger, you need to eat cooked meals by roasting the meat of slain animals and regain energy by resting in front of a campfire or a fire pit. While you are exploring, you should scrounge for small stone and branches, which you need to create campfires. Luckily, gathering basic resources is abundant on Arboreus, so this shouldn't be an issue. It is very easy for hunger to kick in and your energy to be depleted, especially if you're constantly engaging in combat, which you will a lot of the time. To set up a campfire, you'll simply have to go to the crafting and building menu and then blueprints. Additionally, to make your travels more manageable, you must tame and ride a horse. As such, you can traverse long roads more quickly, so you spend less energy running around from one point of interest to the next. Another survival element to consider is the weather. Wearing armor that provides you with optimal defenses will not necessarily be advantageous if encounters were to take place in harmful weather conditions. Such is the case if you wear hide armor under the scorching heat, as indicated by the temperature in the screen's upper right-hand corner. As such, you receive warm stacks, which can potentially inflict the burning status effect, thereby damaging you over time. The only way to circumvent it is to switch to another armor set, like leather armor. If you perish due to environmental factors or combat, you become unconscious. This gives you the option to die quickly or to wait for 30 seconds before respawning in the same area. If you choose the former, you will lose all of your items in the inventory and even some of your equipment, but you do not need to wait very long. If you select the latter, you retain your belongings, however, you receive an HP penalty. What happens is that your max HP is reduced by a certain percentage as indicated by the increasing purple bar. To remove it, you must sit in front of a fire pit, not the campfire. Equipment is not obtained from the creatures you kill, but through crafting, and so this is going to be a huge part of your experience. Gear degrades over time, especially when you die, and currently there is no way to repair items in the game, so you will need to recreate them. Remember, though, that not all crafting needs to be done in front of workstations. Things such as commoner and hide armor, linen bandages for healing, and primitive weapons can be done via the menu. For advanced crafts, however, you need workstations and a capable city that actively engages in research. Doing so grants access to specialized gear with higher durability and one that provides better perks. But it will cost more in terms of the resources you must gather and the gold you need to pay. Combat in Fractured Online is straightforward in that you activate the abilities on your hotbar to damage targets, but you can only engage with them if you're not riding a horse. What needs more improvement is the hit indicator of these abilities as well as the corresponding attack animation. There is no reliable visual measure to let you know if any of your attacks will land on the enemy or not, so you are left fumbling with the controls during the encounter. Another is the animation itself. When your character is supposedly dodging, for example, the word dodge is displayed instead. It would have been better to show that you have successfully evaded the attack rather than simply seeing the words on the screen. Additionally, I experienced instances where the AI just stood in place, allowing me to pelt them with arrows easily. Hopefully this will be fixed and improved upon in succeeding patches. On the bright side, Dynamight Studios are actively working and resolving bugs on a daily basis, so it shouldn't take too long to fix. While you're starting and your city is young, you'll engage in PvE to kill creatures and gain experience, but once it turns into an empire, you can participate in PvP to raid hostile cities for gold and other resources. Fractured Online is thorough when it comes to city management because of the buildings you can set up. For starters, you can opt to purchase a land parcel for your house for 4,000 gold, or join a settlement to claim a city, which is what my guildmates and I did first. As long as you're either the governor or vice governor, you can set up plots around the land you own. The houses you build on top of them are not mandatory, but appealing for those who want to store their personal items if the public bank doesn't suit them. The governor can set taxes for their citizens, residents, and foreigners. Doing so will allow them to fund projects to improve their city further. Alternatively, you can rely on donations from your guildmates. You can also have to maintain the town hall by setting up farms and harvesting certain crops. Final thoughts. Fractured Online is an isometric open-world sandbox MMO where knowledge points, crafting, and city management are the game's main highlights. Consistently enhancing the city's rank will open up new technologies and additional crafting stations. The whole system will take time to fully develop due to the heavy coordination required to successfully build and manage the land you own. However, there are several improvements and bugs which need to be addressed prior to the game's full launch. These include the possibility of setting up additional servers to reduce connection issues, permanently fixing major issues like the global chat and market functionalities, as well as party and guild invitations, and finally random crashes. But what I'd like to point out is that the developers are responsive and they communicate with the player base very often. Despite these issues, Fractured Online continues to have potential. If you're searching for a sandbox MMO that you can lose hours and hours building your character and city, then you might want to give this game a try. Fractured Online is already available and costs $25.99 USD or €25.99 euros, and is available on both Steam and the game's website, fracturedonline.com. You can use the link below to support the channel.